Hey guys, I'm a little bored and it's too loud around here to do a narration or anything like that. So I thought I'd do another IMDB. I don't have time for a super long video because my husband and son will be home soon. But I thought I would talk about a few of the TV shows that I watched when I was probably like around the 12-ish age 12. Yeah, this is just a very few of them, but plan on doing more. This right here, try and ignore that car revving up, is Eerie, Indiana. Starring Omri Katz, Mary Margaret Humes. You would probably know her best if you watched Dawson's Creek. She played his mother. Omri Katz, many of you probably know from Hocus Pocus. This TV show was on and ended before he filmed Hocus Pocus. There was also, I think there was a spin-off series from this or a reimagining of it that didn't have the same actors that came later on, but anyway, it was about a teenager whose family moved to Indiana, to the town of Eerie, and a lot of unexplained phenomena happens in the town, and he seems to be the only one that notices it. He meets a boy that's a little bit younger than him named Simon, and Simon notices the weirdness too, so they kind of team up and investigate this stuff. Like there's an Elvis living in the town, and like there's ghosts, there's all kinds of weird stuff. It's a really neat show. I think it's Danielle Harris, right? The girl from the Halloween movies. Let me check it out. She was in an episode. Yes, Danielle Harris. She was in a lot of things in the 90s. But anyway, she was in an episode called Heart on a Chain about a boy. Well, okay, she moves to the neighborhood, and the main character, Marshall, and another boy fight for her affection. And it turns out that she has a heart condition. And it's just a really sad episode. It like guts me to the core at the very end of it. It's hard to explain without spoiling it, you know. The odds of probably a lot of you ever seeing it are maybe small, but I don't know. Oh, the hell with it. I'll just tell you. So, anyway, Danielle Harris's character, Melanie, moves to Eerie, and she has a heart condition. And Marshall and his friend Devin compete for her affection. And one day, not too long after Melanie moved to town, Devin was showing off on his skateboard. I think he got hit by a milk truck or something, and he died. And Melanie ended up, unrealistically, getting his heart. So she had a heart transplant, and his heart was put inside her. And she started acting like him. And she was wearing a locket necklace that Devin had given her before he died. And Marshall felt like the locket was causing her to act like Devin. And she was doing all these reckless things that she wouldn't have done before her heart surgery. And at the end of the episode, she realizes that Marshall's probably right. And she goes to the cemetery, to Devin's grave, to say goodbye. And she puts the locket necklace, I believe she either rests it on his grave or she puts it around like an angel, cherubic faced little angel's neck, and basically says, thank you for the heart, but I've got to let you go. And as she's walking away with Marshall, like the angel statue sheds a tear, and it just kills me. Oh my God. And they kind of alluded at the end of the episode that she still ended up dying of a heart condition. It was weird. But yeah, there was a lot of really interesting episodes. Another show that I really liked was called The Torkelsons. It was about, well, I'll read it. A single mother of 5, Mrs. Millicent Torkelson, is a do-it-yourself with a flair for finding ingenious ways to make ends meet and making the best of bad times. And the main character is the oldest daughter, Dorothy Jane. So it's basically about this single mom who has all these kids right here, and they live in Pyramid Corners, Oklahoma. And the main character, Dorothy Jane, is always trying to fit in with people at school and, you know, trying to be popular and well-liked despite the fact that, you know, she can't afford to buy the cool clothes, and she's really, really smart. It was always a really heartwarming show. There was actually a spin-off series to this. This one ended in 1992. And the following year, they had Torkelson's Almost Home, where Dorothy Jane and Chucky Lee, her little brother, and Mary Sue, her little sister, all moved to Seattle because Mrs. Torkelson got a job kind of being a housekeeper nanny to a man's teenage children, and he was very wealthy, so he had enough room in his huge house for, you know, Miss Torkelson and the kids. They didn't explain what happened to these two right here, Stephen Floyd and, what's her name? Ruth Ann. I guess we're just led to assume that they maybe went and stayed with their father. I'm not really sure. It's interesting because in the Torkelsons, the original series, the father was like very hard to find. Like he hadn't seen them in years, and he showed up one episode, made a lot of promises, and disappeared. So it seems weird that they would go live with him. But anyway, in Torkelson's Almost Home, the man's two kids were actually, one of them was Brittany Murphy, like pre-Clueless. And the other one was Jason Marsden, who actually played a role in Eerie, Indiana. And he plays a sidekick friend a lot. He played Rich in Step by Step. He was Eric's friend, Jason, for the first, I don't know if it was for the first 2 seasons or just for the first season of Boy Meets World. You know, he pops up all over the place, but he mostly does voice work. And actually, Ben Affleck was in one episode of Torkelson's Almost Home, too. So that was interesting. And Joy Lawrence popped up in that show for a while. Allison Hannigan from Buffy and American Pie popped up. So yeah. Another show that I watched, I didn't watch it super religiously, but I watched it quite often, was the all-new Mickey Mouse Club, or MMC. It was a reboot of the old show. I think they had a couple reboots, to be honest. They had the original in the 50s. Then in the 70s, I believe, Lisa Whelchel, who played Blair on The Facts of Life, I believe that she was in a version of the Mickey Mouse Club too, something like that. But this was like a successful reboot. And yes, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, and Christina Aguilera were on it. But to be honest, when I watched it, I barely noticed them, because they showed up like the very last 2 seasons, something like that. You know, I more remember people like, you know, Damon right here. Lindsay. Albert. I remember Brandy. Definitely remember Jennifer McGill. Oh, she has a really good song, and it's on YouTube, the music video, from the movie My Boyfriend's Back. It's called Holding On for Dear Life. Check it out. She's a really good singer. I remember this guy, Chasen. So yeah, I remember, you know, there was a lot more people on this show than just the ones who were lucky enough to make it big. And to be honest with you, obviously Justin and Brittany and them and Kerry Russell are all very talented, but you know, Lindsay Alley and Jennifer McGill, you know, they were really, really talented, and they still are. They just, I don't know, they weren't marketed the same way. So don't think that just because these other kids from the show didn't make it hugely mainstream, don't think it doesn't mean that they're just as talented, if not more talented. And of course, JC Chazet was on here too. I'm not really sure if I pronounce his name right ever, but he was on, you know, from NSYNC. He was on the MMC for a couple years longer than Justin was, and I remember him more, so. Also, I liked that the host for most of the seasons, the adult host, his name is Fred Newman, and he actually, even though this was on the Disney Channel, he actually did a lot of stuff for Nickelodeon. I'm not sure if he did any voices for the Rugrats or not, or like any like weird noises, because he could make noises with his mouth, kind of like that Michael guy from Police Academy. And he was the voice of Skeeter on Doug. So yeah, I always enjoyed watching the new Mickey Mouse Club. And lastly, because I'm dredging on here, but I'll make more of these. Under the Umbrella Tree. I don't know. I was a little old for this show by the time, you know, it was on the Disney Channel. It started in 1986 and went to 1993. I probably didn't start watching it till the 90s, so. But it was about this woman, and it's Canadian. It was about this woman named Holly who moved into an apartment that had a big umbrella tree in it. And when she moved in, she realized that these three critters right here were already living there. So they just all lived together, basically. We have Jacob Blue Jay, Iggy Iguana, and Gloria Gopher. And Gloria's gopher hole was right underneath the umbrella tree. And Jacob had a birdhouse. I think Iggy slept in the bookshelf, or I can't exactly remember. But yeah, it was a cute little show. Lots of puppets on it. Gloria's best friend was a white puppy named Mitzi. There was an old woman puppet named Mrs. McMurtry. So yeah. Ooh, you know what? One more. Oh, I'm seeing so many I want to talk about now. Damn. I'll just keep talking. Adventures in Wonderland. I was way too old for this when it was on. Even though Alice was actually, the girl that played Alice was actually my age when this was on, 1992 to 1994. And she was learning language arts stuff like I was in 7th grade. You know, it was still a show geared towards younger kids. But it was interesting because Alice lived in modern times, and she had a long looking glass in her room where she could step inside of it, and then she'd fall into Wonderland, and then she could leave whenever she wanted to. This was the Queen. This is the White Rabbit. He has this like tux vest on and a bow tie, and like he has elbow pads on because he gets around on rollerblades. Terry Garr was in this. She played the Duchess, I think. She was kind of a frenemy of the Queen. It was a pretty blurry picture, but. And there's the Mad Hatter and the March Hare. And there's Alice. Here's the caterpillar. He was actually, I don't know if he was the principal or a teacher on That's So Raven, but I've seen him pop up everywhere. Here's the Cheshire Cat. Those are a bunch of soft pretzels, because Hatter made a pretzel making machine. And in this episode, the Queen had a brand new ruby ring, and I think that the White Rabbit I don't know if he was trying to get her ring resized or what, but he had her ring, I believe. And they thought that somehow the ring fell into the dough in the pretzel machine. So they had to eat all the pretzels to try and find the ring. And then they ate all the pretzels and they found the ring somewhere else. So yeah. Well, I saw a couple other ones that I'd like to talk about, but I think I'll just write them down and do it a different day. So, alright guys, talk to you later.